Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have friends that like Buffy, share it with them. It all helps the algorithm, and consider supporting the channel through our Patreon. The usual spoiler alert. I may talk about things in these analyses that relate to future plot points. So if you haven't seen all of Buffy at least once and don't like spoilers, I suggest you like the channel, then come back once you've seen it all. Today we continue our look at Season 2 with Episode 6, Halloween. A plot summary. It's Halloween, so we're in a pumpkin patch. Buffy is fighting a vampire and has a creepy stalker perv filming her from the bushes. It's one of Spike's minions, recording how she fights. Angel is waiting for Buffy at the Bronze. Cordelia shows up. Buffy finally arrives, sees them two laughing together, gets all teenage angsty and leaves. Snyder forces the Scoobies to chaperone kids for Halloween. Xander and Larry try to outdouche each other. Buffy pushes Larry into the soda machine, gets free soda. Xander feels emasculated. Boo-hoo Xander. Buffy and Willow hilariously steal the Watcher diaries to learn more about Angel. They see a noblewoman who they can't identify despite her name being written right next to the picture of her. Buffy and Willow tell Cordelia that Angel is a vampire. She doesn't believe them. Cordy proclaims herself the slayer of dating, despite the fact she is routinely being ignored and stood up by Devon. They go costume shopping. Willow is a ghost, Xander a G.I. Joe, and Buffy finds her 18th century gown. Spike's reviewing the fight footage, already shows admiration for Buffy. Drew tells him she's going to be vulnerable. Ethan gets all chanty over a Janice statue. Willow has abs, but covers them in ghost costume because bare midriffs aren't her thing. Out trick-or-treating when, poof! Everyone is their costume. Willow is a sexy ghost, Xander a soldier, and Buffy a useless 18th century noblewoman. Willow takes charge, gets everyone inside, goes to get Giles, and scares the crap out of him walking through a wall. They figure out it's Ethan's, that's the issue. Ethan calls him Ripper, Giles tells Willow to leave. Pirate Larry goes to molest Buffy, Xander beats him up, which makes him feel all manly. Spike and the monsters find them, Giles persuades Ethan to tell him how to end the spell by beating the crap out of him. Giles breaks the statue of Janice, Buffy is back, kicks the crap out of Spike. Willow dumps the ghost costume, Oz is all, who is that girl? Angel and Buffy kiss, Ethan and Giles kiss. Wait, no, Ethan has fled doing his best Terminator, I'll be back, because he is obsessed with Giles. There are 3 Halloween episodes of Buffy. 2 of them are outstanding and 1 is mediocre, and this is one of the outstanding ones. It is, however, one of those strange episodes of Buffy, because it's an episode that is universally loved by the fandom, but seldom ever makes it onto anyone's favourite episode list. Now, I have a theory as to why that is. This episode is credited as being written by Carl Ellsworth, who was fired after writing it. Rumour has it that his initial script was terrible, and the episode we got was apparently rewritten by Marty Noxon, and was the reason she was appointed story editor during Season 2. Now, Marty Noxon is responsible for one of the worst Buffy episodes of all 7 seasons, in Bad Eggs, which we'll see later this season. But she's also responsible for some great Buffy episodes in this season, such as Surprise and I Only Have Eyes for You. And she wrote over 20 episodes of Buffy in total, not to mention her various other roles on the show. And if the rumour is true, and she did rewrite this episode, she did a great job of it. Now, I like to describe this episode narratively as a lovely chaotic mess, because despite lacking a solid story structure, it still succeeds. Compare this episode to last episode. Reptile Boy, I think, was narratively much better written than this episode, but this episode is a far superior episode of Buffy. I think it works in this episode partially because it's on theme for the episode, with Ethan doing his best to Loki it up as an agent of chaos. But I think the lack of story structure means you have an episode with great character development and insight, and some outstanding little moments that doesn't quite hit narratively, so gets passed up on people's top episode lists, in favour of episodes that have a more structurally sound narrative and more overall story arc impact. The issues with this story can largely be traced to the antagonist, or in this case, the two antagonists, because we have both Spike and Ethan as our antagonists here, competing for screen time. The major issue here is that Spike is just along for the ride, merely taking advantage of something else happening. So despite all his study of Buffy at the start of the episode, helpless Buffy just falls into his lap. It's not happening through any machination of his devising. Initially, Ethan appears to be doing this simply for a locally-like desire to create chaos and see what happens. So the fact we have a weakened Buffy is coincidence. Or is it? Ethan seems to have specifically targeted Sunnydale. More importantly, Giles and his charge. He gave the dress specifically to Buffy at an offer she couldn't refuse, and knew Giles was the Watcher and Buffy was his Slayer. I don't think he was simply acting as an agent of chaos. I believe his spell was far more targeted and deliberate, but I don't think he had any interest in putting Buffy in danger either. It seems all devised to get Giles' attention, which, I might add, worked. But I'll talk about the two of them later. So story-wise, we have Spike studying Buffy, realising she's crafty and resourceful, that she improvises. We have Ethan weakening Buffy to get Giles' attention. Spike attacks a weakened Slayer who is weak through no effort on his part. But when the spell is broken and real Buff returns, Buffy decisively hands his ass to him, kicking the absolute crap out of him, much like Giles did to Ethan. So while Ethan gets what he wants, all the effort Spike made as an antagonist was for nothing, because it didn't help him at all. This is also a stark contrast to the last time they fought, in School Hard too, where Spike had the upper hand and would have won apart from Joyce's interference with an axe. So the question becomes, why was Spike necessary in this episode? Well, apart from needing Drew to prompt the vampires venturing out on Halloween, something they usually find tacky, I'll discuss why it needed to be Spike later. The reason that this episode is universally loved is because it is full of great little character development moments, like Willow's growth, the great overall story seeding moments, like the reveal that Giles has a past, and the continued slow development of Willow and Oz, as well as just perfect little moments like Giles being startled by Willow, that all come together in an enjoyable episode. On a sad note, Robin Sachs, who played Ethan Rayne, unfortunately passed away from heart attack in 2013. Janus is a Roman god who, interestingly, doesn't have an equivalent in the Greek pantheon. He is the Roman god of beginnings and transitions, chaos, duality, doors, war and peace, basically anything that has a beginning. In Ovid's Fasti, Janus himself says, "Whatever you see, sky, sea, clouds, earth, all things are closed and open by my hand. The guardianship of this vast universe is in my hands alone." Ethan invoking him for this spell is perfect because the spell itself embodies that notion of chaos, harnessing the insecure duality of the self and transitions and beginnings. This notion of duality and transitions and beginnings is apparent in Buffy herself. Buffy is feeling insecure about dating Angel and struggling with stereotypical gender roles that she doesn't fit into, wants to be the kind of girl she thinks Angel would have fallen for before he was a vampire. So Willow and her steal the Watcher's diaries and find a drawing of a woman, and Buffy wants to be like her. Not having to think about monsters and ambush tactics and slaying, and just dresses and being pretty. When Ethan's spell kicks in, this is exactly what she gets, becoming the damsel in distress who needs a man to save her. When the spell is broken and Buffy is back to her usual slayery self, she kicks the crap out of Spike, sending him scurrying away, and says, "You know what? It's good to be me." Now, I said earlier that despite Spike not actually being necessary for the story, it needed to be Spike that she faced for the theme, because the theme here is about being comfortable in who you are, and when Buffy fully embraces who she is as the Slayer, she finds her strength. That strength is demonstrated here in her second fight with Spike. She isn't even the slightest bit nervous about facing Spike, despite the fact that last time they met, she was bested. Here, she kicks his butt, even takes joy in it. When she truly embraces being the Slayer, Spike doesn't stand a chance. Even having studied Buffy's tactics doesn't help him at all. This marks another turning point for Buffy, and is the point where she really leaves her childhood behind for good and moves towards her adulthood, on theme with transitions and beginnings with the Roman god Janus. Now, while Buffy will never completely reconcile being the Slayer and being a normal girl, she will learn to embrace being the Slayer, particularly toward the end of this season. Xander is experiencing the same issue, struggling with a gender role that he doesn't really fit into. We've already seen in Teacher's Pet that Xander wants to be the hero. He wants to be the stereotypical macho guy who saves the day and gets the girl. Here, he can't even defend himself against the school bully. Buffy saves him from a beating and he gets annoyed about it. His ego is bruised. As Willow says, poor Xander, boys are so fragile. As a soldier at least, he gets to embrace that inner hero. He gets to be someone more stereotypically masculine, and he gets to save Buffy when she's attacked by Pirate Larry. Xander also retains some of his soldier knowledge after the spell is broken, which will prove useful later on. He does come to reconcile the fact that he will never be like Buffy. He will never be that sort of hero. And in Season 4 episode Restless, Snyder asks, "Are you a soldier?" And Xander replies, "I'm a Confortador." And as a Confortador, he saves the whole world from destruction by Dark Willow in Season 6. Cordy has no issues. Cordy is unchanged by her costume and is just always Cordy. The story reason for this is because she got her costume at a different place. The meta reason is because she dresses like a cat and is always catty anyway. But thematically, it's because Cordy is the What If Buffy. Her role and character are explicitly defined. There is no "I want to be someone else." Cordy truly believes that everyone wants to be her. Willow's transformation is interesting given that it shows that she is quite comfortable in who she is. She doesn't want to be anyone else, and for that reason, she's the only one still themselves after they change. Willow's issues are all appearance related, and more so what other people will think seeing her like that. She says to Buffy that she's not comfortable in exposing her flesh, that the hot girl is not who she is. So when Xander arrives, she throws her ghost sheet costume over the top of her sexy outfit. However, when Willow changes, she doesn't become the sheet ghost or an invisible ghost. She becomes a sexy ghost. People can see her, but they can't touch her. The reason this change is interesting is because it means she really does want to be seen as sexy. She wants to be noticed. I think she has hidden in the past mainly because of her attraction to Xander. She sees how he talks about Cordelia being a slut all the time, and Willow doesn't want Xander to think about her the same way. But here, she's in charge, and people still listen to her and still respected her, despite her being sexy. And she develops a newfound confidence. That means when she reverts back, she ditches the ghost and struts off down the street, and for the second time is noticed by Oz. Now, probably the most profound of the transformations is Giles, because his change isn't driven by magic, it's driven by circumstance. And Giles and Ethan here are the real core of the theme in this episode. Giles as the Watcher represents order, while Ethan is the agent of chaos. Together they represent the duality of the god Janus. Ethan remarks on Giles' stuffy librarian persona and calls him Ripper, indicating there is a history between them and that there is much more to Giles than what we've seen. And Giles loosens his reins and we see some of the darkness that is lurking beneath the tweed exterior. And in Giles lies the heart of this episode's theme, that within all of us exists this duality, the capacity for order and chaos, light and dark, yin and yang. The difference in Giles compared to the teenagers of our main cast is that Giles is already grown. He is beyond the transition phase represented by Janus that Buffy, Willow and Xander are in. So while they are still trying to find themselves and embrace who they are, Giles has done that long ago, which is why he has no need of a costume. Buffy is well known for the relationship between Tara and Willow, and for displaying that first kiss. But Buffy features a few members of the Pride family, and Ethan was definitely one of them. And there are strong vibes that Giles is too. There is a definite sexual undertone to Giles and Ethan's relationship, and we learn in this and future episodes that they do have history, and they have definitely had sex. They are part of a group that used to summon a demon for a high, and Willow says ancient sex used to induce possession for bacchanals and orgies. Now, Giles' group had 5 men and 1 girl in it. There was definitely some man-on-man action going on in those orgies. Jane Espenson, who wrote Band Candy and A New Man, both being Ethan Rayne and Giles-focused episodes, very much links their relationship sexually. In A New Man, she intertwines the Giles and Ethan scenes with Buffy and Riley sparring, a sexual metaphor, and Willow and Tara doing magic, another sexual metaphor. On Giles and Ethan, Espenson said, "I have always felt that there was something between Giles and Ethan when they were younger." And when asked on whether that was sexual, she replied, "Come on, they both went to public school." Now, I thought this from their very first interaction. It was quite clear to me that these two men had had sex, just from their body language, the way they speak to each other, even just the way Ethan says Ripper sounds sexual. Now, comment down below if you thought that too, or if you just never noticed it, and do you see it now it's being pointed out. I'm just going off my memory here, so I can't be 100% sure, but I think the only people who call Giles Ripper when actually talking to him throughout all 7 seasons are Jenny, Joyce, Olivia and Ethan. And the one thing they all have in common, they've all slept with him. Now in Vampire Diaries, Stefan was referred to as a Ripper, and it was a term used for particularly sadistic vampires who mutilated their prey. And initially I thought that Giles' nickname referred to a similar predilection, harking back to Jack the Ripper. Now given that the only people who call him Ripper are people he's apparently had sex with, I think Ripper is a sexual nickname, and I'll just leave it up to your imaginations as to the possible whys. This whole idea of Giles and Ethan having a romantic or sexual past is further strengthened by the major theme of this episode discussed earlier, the duality within all of us. Together, Giles and Ethan represented duality, chaos and order. In an episode that is so clearly focused on internal duality, it makes little sense to include a very obvious external duality unless the two parts of that duality had once been one. Now on the topic of man-on-man action, in this episode we have Larry, who will come out later this season when Xander questions him somewhat indirectly about being a werewolf, and Larry thinks he's talking about being gay. This episode is our first reference to this gayness, and it's a slur. It started in the 80s but was common in the 90s that gay men were referred to as butt pirates, and I think Larry choosing a pirate costume was an intentional innuendo in reference to his sexuality. They do a couple of things to further set the eventual Cordelia-Xander relationship up here. First, Xander says he prefers his women in spandex, and the only one in spandex is Cordy. And we see Cordelia looking at him appreciatively when he's playing soldier. There is inconsistencies in this episode around Angel's age. Willow says that Angel was 18 in 1775, which would make his birth date 1757. But we learn later this season that he was born in 1727 and started in Galway in 1753. My favourite quote for this episode is from Drew and Spike.
Do you love my insides? The parts you can't see?
Eyeballs to entrails, my sweet.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this look into the Buffyverse, please like, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me through Patreon. If you've disagreed with anything I said, or have anything else I missed, please put it in the comments below, and I'll see you next episode.